What's
going
up?
on, Wes?
What's going on, man? What are you doing, JR?
I'm actually on the lake fishing. I came out here to make a video on this boat. David Mercer loaned me his microphone so I could finish this video today, and I couldn't help it. I had to fish.
So did you get all the footage you needed?
I mean, yeah. I think I got adequate footage.
Well, good deal.
I brought a little crappie rod with me, and I tried shooting some docks, couldn't get anything, so I cheated and went to a boat slip and caught some crappie on a boat slip. I'm fishing North Carolina, so I can use crappies as long as they're whole. So I got the sides knocked off of them, and Zach only had 2 rods in his boat, so I got 2 rods out.
Oh, okay. Good deal. I'd like to hear one of them go off while we're doing the show tonight. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Might happen. You know, I'm anchored in 27 feet of water, and I'm fishing on one side of the boat. I got a bait in about 35 feet of water. On the other side of the boat, I got a bait in about 8 feet of water. And the water temp is 48 degrees.
That ain't too bad.
I know the moon looks full. I haven't checked the moon phase, but it looks full. If it isn't the day of the full, the day of the full is either tomorrow or we just had it.
Well, we're going to talk about lakes tonight. Let's talk about Wiley.
Okay.
We'll start with Wiley.
Lake Wiley.
What's really known for? Catfish or striper, a little bit of both?
Well, Lake Wiley doesn't have any striper. It's one of the, I want to say 2 lakes on the Catawba chain that is not stocked with striper, and it's mostly because North and South Carolina can't come to an agreement on anything. Like the licenses aren't reciprocal. You know, we're split here on Lake Wiley in North and South Carolina, and you better not get caught fishing on the South Carolina side and not have your South Carolina license, vice versa. They're pretty strict on it. I don't know why North and South Carolina want to butt heads on Lake Wiley so much, but there aren't any stripers, but we do have a healthy population of blue catfish that get, you know, I caught 165, caught 162. I've caught over a dozen, over 50. So I think we got a pretty healthy population of fish, 50 plus, around 50 pounds in here anyways. Probably too many. Well, I say too many. There aren't really a lot caught. But one guy's, Jeff Manning's theory is if we would start harvesting some of these 50s, then we would see, you know, we'd get bigger fish. I don't know if that's true or what, but I've caught some good fish in here. I love Lake Wiley. Lake Wiley doesn't really stratify like most lakes. I mean, I'm sure it stratifies, but you're not going to get any a thermocline until probably you get down around like south of Mills Creek area.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to bring a temperature out, a thermometer out here and drop it down and see what the water temps are, you know, on the bottom and middle and on the top layer, right in the center of the main channel, right in here. But we get a lot of water moving through here. We got the lake above us is Mountain Island. It's a small lake. And the lake above it is Lake Norman, and it's the biggest lake in North Carolina at 33,500 acres. So they move, you get a lot of water coming through Mountain Island, and then we also get a lot of water coming through Wiley. Wiley's about 12,500 acres, so you can fit about 3 Lake Wileys in Lake Norman.
Oh, okay. So when you say stratify, you're talking about what we call, or we simple salmon people, we call the lake turning over.
Yeah, well, yeah, lakes that stratify, you do have a turnover, a fall turnover. That's where you got 3 layers basically. Your top layer is the hypolimnium, bottom layer is the epilimnium, and then your middle layer is the thermocline.
Yeah.
As the fall comes around, the top layer is the warmest layer in the water. Warmest water column in the water column, and it'll start to cool off in the fall, And as that top layer starts to cool off, it becomes more dense, which means it's heavier, and it starts to sink. And eventually you'll have what was the top layer will now be all the way to the bottom, and then it's basically all one uniform temp, and it scatters the fish, it scatters the plankton, it scatters the fish, and it's usually the fall turnovers. Usually people look at it as being tough to fish.
Well, me and Todd Smith, I talked to Todd yesterday for about 45 minutes. You remember Todd?
Oh yeah, Todd Smith. That was one of my favorite shows.
And and he said it's kind of funny. He said, especially up there, the weather changes. You might have a 2 or 3 65, 70-degree days in the wintertime, and everybody's getting their boats out, and everybody thinks that the water's going to warm up and the fish is going to get active. But I think in retrospect, especially in a river, it might warm the water up just a tad on the surface. But I'm like Todd, I don't think it really changes a whole lot of stuff. Now, when you get a rain, if you're going to get an inch or two of rain in 60, 65, even 70-degree days in the wintertime, like he said, that will warm the water up enough maybe to make fish a little bit active. But, when you're in a river and even a lake like Hartwell, maybe back then a creek, that water might get a little bit warm. But, 2 or 3 days of 70 degree weather during the day, and then it's getting right back down into middle 30s or even low 40s at night. I don't see whether it's really changing a whole lot. Other than people's wanting to get out there and fish because it's warm and they're not freezing.
Well, from my experience, when you're in the dead of winter, most people, they start calling November, late November, early December. They start calling it winter. We don't get winter. The first day of winter isn't until December 20th. So you get through December, you get into January. January is still early winter. And then you get on into the, late January, early February. That's when you're in the heart of winter, and that's when those water temps are starting to get down into the 40s, and fishing starts to get tougher. The fish go deeper, they hold tighter to structure. So from my experience, when you have those unseasonably warm days, late January, early February, where you might get a 60-degree day, 70-degree day, couple days, those are the days to go hit it, man. I've had my best days on those warm days in the dead of winter. But as far as like going to the backs of creeks and everything, and once that water dips down into the 40s, those fish move out of it. Doesn't matter anymore about the backs of the creeks being more nutrient rich, muddier, more stained. They heat up quicker, they hold heat longer.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. All that's out the window once that water temp dips down into the 40s, low 40s. Those fish move out of those creeks. They're coming back out into the main channel, and it's time to start dragging the edges of the channels. And you'll notice when you're catching catfish during this time of year, they'll have mud on them where they're up against the channel ledge. They're holding so tight to that channel ledge.
So water temperature, what do you think, which fish do you think is affected more by the cold water, catfish or striper?
Well, what you were saying earlier, as far as the water temp, not really, when you have a cold front, it's not really changing the water temp all that much, because it's really just changing the surface temp. It's dropping it a few degrees, or warm front. The thing about that is exactly it's the barometer. I think it's the barometer that's affecting the fish more than the actual temperature change. You're going to get that with any kind of front, especially on a peak moon. Days leading up to a peak moon and days after a peak moon tend to be really good. You tend to have and the reason it's good, I think, is because you have that barometer change, whether it be a falling or a rising barometer. But what did you ask me about stripers?
I just wonder, as far as cold water, does it affect, as far as when it comes to getting so cold and make them lethargic, where they really want to, if they eat it all, they're going to eat small bait? Does that affect the catfish quicker or the striper quicker? I'd say the catfish, because striper they like colder water, but
yeah, that's a good question. I kind of hold to the theory of, I use big baits year round. I'm not one of those guys that down. When I'm crappie fishing, I'll use a smaller jig. The crappie, in the springtime, late spring, early summer, you can use an 1/8 ounce jig head with a big old fluke or a big Bobby Garland and hammer the crappie and the perch. But in the wintertime, when the water temps in the 40s, even the 30s, I've had to crappie fishing in the past. I've had to actually downsize my jig head down to a 1/100th. I usually use a 1/64 or a 1/30. 1/32 is what I use most. Then I'll go to a 1/64, and I've actually went to a 1/100th when the water temp's like 38, 39 with a flick tail with 2-pound line. And I'll just carry a little trout net with me, and I can't boat the fish. I can't hoist them over, but I have to net every fish when I do that. That is so it affects the crappie, and if it affects the crappie, then it probably affects other fish too. But I just use big baits year round. The fish that I'm after aren't they're the way they behave. There's no science. There's really no science to the way the fish I'm after behave. I'm after fish that are anomalies. I'm after fish that they're off there by themselves. They have their own ecosystem. They basically have their own little city to themselves because they're the apex predator. No other fish are going to come in there. That's his turf. I'm after those fish. Like when you pull up to a dock, when you're crappie fishing, you're shooting docks, especially at night, if you're fishing lighted docks for crappie, perch, hybrids, whatever. When you pull up to those docks, you'll usually see one solitary bass. There'll be one big, 5-6 pound bass behind one of the pylons of the pier. He's the only bass in there. There's no other bass around because he's the Mac Daddy. It's like a lion in the animal kingdom. No other bass want to come around him. So he's there. He's not picky. He just comes out. He eats when he wants to. You can't get him to take any lures. I mean, you basically have to use live bait to catch him, and that's the kind of catfish I'm after. I'm after that version of a catfish.
Well, like when we were in the bay this year too, it was I thought it was kind of weird that, they were talking about water temperature, and the water temperatures was still, I mean, we caught a lot of fish, but the water temperatures was still high. And I think, Chuck and them was telling me, and Clint, that water temperature there, 45, 46, 43 degrees, those three temperatures is like the perfect temperature. And I think when we were there, we were fishing in water 47, 48. I think the highest water temperature I seen was 48 degrees one day, and the sun was real high. And then like in Tennessee, you get in Tennessee, pulling in rivers, 42, 40 degree water just seems like brutal cold to me, especially like when you get up around 61. And then I'm like, when you're in Melton Hill, when that whole body of water there, again, we've talked about this before, you got a river system, just one river system that's 150 miles long. And all that water is just cold as shit in a river. Them fish can go hold up anywhere. That's why, there again, everybody talks about that Tennessee easy button. You just don't see a lot I don't see a lot of big fish. I see more big fish caught in the spring and the summer than I do in the winter and the fall in Tennessee. Because it just gets harder.
I mean, I don't really know a lot about because the cold water up there throws me off. You can go up there in Tennessee and you can fish, headwaters, and the water temp be in the 50s in friggin' July. I mean, that just totally throws me off. But those fish, I've caught fish up there in June, and the water temp be in the 50s, and I pull the striper over the rail, and sperm coming out of the striper everywhere from where they're actually spawning. I mean, that is insane to think about stripers spawning, in late June, early July. But up there, it happens. And I think a lot of the spring and fall, those fish are going up to those headwaters to spawn. Well, it's a fall spawn, but they're still going up there. But are they going up there in those cold waters when that the water temps? They're different times of the year up there. They're not your standard, spring around here. Like on the Savannah chain, is when once April hits, April, May, the water temps climb up into mid 60s. The fish start to head up the river to spawn, and that's when you can hit the easy button. That's when you can go up there and, I go to Norman and the hybrids up there at Norman. Now you can go up there in the spring, in April, May, and anchor up in the river portion of the lake and just cut alewives and murder the hybrids. It's just so simple.
Yeah. I mean, it just kills me though when I'm in Tennessee, and there again, everybody talks about that easy button. When that water gets cold, and me and Todd was talking about that last night. I'm wondering, where do these fish go? And then like Middle Tennessee, end of April, let's see, January, March, end of April. I meant end of May, 1st of April. First, second, third week of April. You get up to Old Hickory Dam, and you've got 30 boats in that area less than a mile. And like Todd told me, the key is get away from the boats. They're picking up a fish or two, but he said, those fish know that many boats is up there that, it puts pressure on them.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
It's almost like Chesapeake Bay. Like Hovis used to say, you don't need a depth finder. Just go to where you see 30 boats around each other and put rock lines out, you'll catch fish.
Yeah, that's always been the rule of thumb in striper fishing is the 3 B's. Boat. Yeah. Well, when it comes to saltwater stripers, boats, bridges, and birds.
Yeah. But yeah, Tennessee, and then like Hartwell, when Hartwell was a good fishery. Every lake, I think we talk about patterns and what these fish do certain times of the year. I don't think there's no lake that especially striper, do the same thing as Murray. Those fish do. I mean, they like to swim up in the creeks and blah blah. But certain times of the year, everything's goes by water temperature. But I don't think there's 2 lakes that I've ever fished that the fish do the same thing. There again, fishing in Tennessee, those rivers up there, they're totally different. Those fish are totally different than what they do in impoundments. So it's a lot of just whatever lake you're fishing, you need to know how to fish it, where to fish it. What's the water temperature doing? What time of year is it? What's their most prevalent bait on that body of water? There's a little science to it to a certain degree. And, I see people taking notes. I'd love to have, there's a fisherman here in South Carolina named Gene Lottie. I don't know. There's a few people watching may recognize that name. Randy Brown. Randy used to fish with Gene a lot, and Gene took notes every day. These guys take notes of Chuck Timon takes notes every day. I don't know if you remember when we were staying with Chuck up there, we'd come in at night. First thing he does is open that notebook up. What was the water temperature? Was the wind blowing? Okay, what was the wind blowing? What was using for bait? What time we caught the fish? Where we caught the fish? How fast we were trolling? Was it caught on a board? Was it caught on a down rod? What bait we caught it on?
Well, when you're a striper fisherman, us cat fishermen, we don't really have to take as many notes. But when you're a striper fisherman, those fish disappear. Those fish could disappear. You guys have suffered through so many. I mean, look at Hartwell now. Like you were saying earlier, how the Savannah chain used to be a lot better than what it was. Hartwell used to be a trophy striper fishery. Yeah. Now it's not. So when it is again, and it could be again, guys that took notes, they're going to know what to do. The saltwater guys, when the fish go away, they want to know where the fish. They want to know where the fish are. The legislation has cracked down on the commercial fishermen. Now they can't keep fish over a certain size. Used to, they would just keep the big ones, and they would throw all the small ones back, and you would see like hundreds of small stripers out there in the ocean just floating dead, where the trawlers have scooped them up, kept what they wanted, threw the rest of them back. Now they can't do that. Now it doesn't matter what size they are, they have to keep them, and they have a certain, once they reach a certain weight limit, they have to stop. So that's helping. Striper, you never know what they're going to do. I mean, you hear all kinds of stuff. You can walk on their backs out there 30 miles out. We couldn't keep them off our line, but yet we haven't seen them inside 3 miles in 10 years. Well, so I think that these guys keep these notes so to try to figure out when they do disappear again, because they're going to disappear again. And when they do, they want to have a good idea of what happened and why.
Well, I was talking to a guy there again. Let's talk about the bay again. I know everybody on here, all these freshwater guys like to say saltwater don't matter, but Me personally, I think you're full of shit. Salt water does matter very much to me. But, you know, they were talking about, when we're talking about fishing, and you're talking, especially with really any fish, especially fish that, you know, people like me and you chase, you know, we're anglers. But when you mention the word commercial in anything about fishing, commercial has fucked something up in fishing. Excuse my language, you know.
Yeah.
It's always about commercial fishing. I just
Yeah.
got a link the other day, and me and Clint was talking about this. And I didn't, you know, talk about bait. The fish have to have bait. They have to have a food source. You know, that's how they
Right.
sustain. That's what, you know, that's how they live, just like we eat food. Now,
Right.
there's something going on up there in the bay, and you may know what I'm talking about. They call it Omega, where they're doing something with the Manhattan or the bunker, depending on what part of the country you're in, what they call them. But I think they're like, Chuck could probably explain it to you better. The Omega, and I don't know if that's a company or just something they call that just literally go up there and throw nets and kill billions of Manhattan. And I think they use them for some type of oil in them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, in fact, I just got a guy sent me a link. They're going to have a big meeting about that. It's going to kind of be something like our show, but there's going to be a guy on there talking about what that has done to the Chesapeake Bay. And they believe that's the biggest majority of why those fish don't come in there like they used to, because the bait's not in there like it used to. Did you notice how, you know, when me and you were fishing, you know, every now and then we might mark a big pot of bait, a little pot of bait here and there, and then we might go 3 or 4 hours and not mark nothing?
Yeah.
Clint said years ago, you couldn't move out there without marking bait. You couldn't go 20 foot without marking bait. So
Yeah.
I could see where, you know, whatever that Omega is, what they're doing with those Manhattan, killing that, taking all the bait out of there, the fish has got no reason to go in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think you know, if that isn't the sole reason, then it definitely contributes to it. I do know that I've kept an eye on the water temp down there, you know, Virginia Beach, Oregon Inlet, Chesapeake Bay for the last 10 years. And what I noticed back when I used to saltwater striper fish was I wouldn't even waste my time going down there until that water temp hit 46 degrees.
Yeah.
And once it hit 46, after it's maintained 46 degrees for a week or two, then it would be time to go. That's when those fish would come inside 3 miles. They had to get that cold for them to come in, that because the water inshore inside 3 miles is more nutrient rich. It's more shallow. You're getting a lot more sand. If you'll notice when you're swimming in the ocean and you go out, once you get on out past the breakers, the water clears up.
Yeah.
So, you know, that water tends to be a little warmer, just like it's just the same science as going to the back of a creek on a reservoir, you know. So that bait doesn't come inshore that close until that water temp hits 46 degrees was the magic number from my notes. But it just hasn't gotten that cold until last year, recent years.
Yeah. Peter,
But you know,
Peter,
as far as the trophy stripers, they're just not a sustainable fish, especially freshwater. You know, as far as commercial fishermen go and harvesting them. You know, even in Tennessee, if you look, Tennessee is an extraordinary river system. You know, you got a lot of dissolved oxygen in that river system. It's huge. You got huge dams, huge locks. There's a lot going on in the Tennessee River. There's a lot of living and dying and reproducing and a lot of bait. There's just a smorgasbord of bait. So you got a lot going on in Tennessee. It's a lot more sustainable than, say, the Savannah River. You know, the Savannah River is a mud puddle compared to the Tennessee River.
That's a fact.
So, you know, you start to get a lot of pressure. That's going to contribute to their demise as well. That, you know, the pressures probably helped do the stripers in on the Savannah chain. That's probably not one of the main things, but definitely didn't help.
Peter Malik said the Omega boats have been banned in North Carolina, and every year it seems like the pogies keep coming back pretty strong on the beach, along with the game fish. Just saying, definitely plays a role. All right, Peter, if you're still watching, what is Omega? Is that like the oil that they get out of the fish? Because I've heard that name before. Or is that the nutrient, whatever it is they're taking from these fish while they want to kill so many of them? Or is that the name of why do they call them Omega boats? Is that what they're, you know, I don't understand that. And that whole process. I think there's something that they try to get out of these fish. Is why they want them. So, and that's what they call them up there in the bay, the omega boats. And I think, from my understanding, from the link that I got, they're going to talk about that. I think they're going to try to get it slowed down a little bit in Chesapeake Bay. But there again, at the end of the day, it's going to come back to who's got the most money. You know, it's the
Let me answer Michael McPeaks real quick. Michael, the best, he says, what's the best way to learn how to striper fish? He's 15 miles from Greenwood and he's wanting to learn. That's right around y'all's area. My advice, Michael, is to go on YouTube and look up old school striper fishing. What's his name, Wes? Mike Smedley. Yeah, go watch Mike Smedley's videos. I think Mike Smedley's probably got the most comprehensive how-to videos as far as striper fishing goes on YouTube. So I think that's probably your quickest route to learning to be a striper fisherman.
Yeah, okay. Redfish oil. That's what they call it. Redfish oil.
I'm glad that they banned them in North Carolina, Peter. Peter said they banned them. He said that they banned the omega boats.
I think they may be. I'm not sure what this meeting's going to be about. It's going to be like on a Zoom thing. And I set me a reminder. I'm going to watch it. I'm just interested in, because like I said, I love Chesapeake Bay. It's probably my second love to Tennessee. And as long as I'm able, I'm going to go up there every year, especially when I got somebody like Chuck Timon that's ain't going to charge me for a place to stay. I'm going to be a mooch. But, yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting. I mean, I hear them talking about it. How do they catch that bait, JR? Do they use big gill nets and they just,
probably trawlers. They're probably trawling for them.
Oh, okay. Omega is both, Peter says omega is both the name and the protein. They are using it for paint, cat food, supplement for humans to eat, etc. And they call the main ingredient they're looking for, there, Scott, is red fish oil. What do they use that for? Hey, baby, what do they use red fish oil for? You ever heard of it?
I have no idea.
Right here. Let's see.
Well, he was with us. I don't know what happened to him.
Could it be something to do with the heart? 1 second.
Perry is on that Simpsonville wireless.
Come on back, Perry.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to help your heart. It's krill oil, and it may be effective in reducing cholesterol and triglycerides.
Well, I need to get some of that. Yeah, they say it's good for your heart and good for your what is it? Triglycerides. So
and it reduces inflammation. Arthritis, joint pain.
Oh yeah, so that's a money thing. If the fishermen got enough money, they'll let them keep killing them. Somebody else can put up enough money to say, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. Let's don't kill them no more. Let's slow it down. Because, striped bass, I think up there in the bay, if I'm not mistaken, if you've got a commercial license, you can kill as many as you want just because you've got that commercial license. And we lost Perry again.
Very struggling.
Todd Smith said
we
takes
got
every day for help, for heart help.
We got some stripers here on the Catawba chain. The very first lake on the Catawba chain is Lake James, and it's really known for it's like a mountainous lake, Clearwater Lake, deep. It's got the muskie and the walleye and smallmouth, no stripers. And then we have Lake Rhodius, and Lake Rhodius has stripers, and but they're just not. I mean, you can't compare it to Tennessee. You can't even compare it to the Savannah chain or even Saluda. As far as striper fishing goes around here, I would say that Lake Murray is probably the best striper fishing we have. I mean, maybe not for trophy stripers, but definitely for quantity, I would imagine.
Well, let's talk about Clark's Hill for a minute. Clark's Hill used to be a great lake. There's Perry. Can you hear us, Scott? You can't hear us? We can hear you.
We can hear you.
But Clark's Hill used to be an awesome fishery.
Yeah.
They put that oxygen line in down there, and this is just my opinion. I think that really hurt that fishery.
Do you think it hurt it?
Yes, I went down there a couple of years ago, and I think we counted 18 boats out there, just right on the other side of the oxygen line, and they were catching hybrid so fast they was catching them as soon as you dropped the herring down.
Yeah,
there was people getting their down limits and gone in 30 minutes. So doing that every day, that hurts the fishery.
Clark Hill's definitely became a put and take fishery. It's for the guys that, and that's why guides. There's so many guides on Clark. There's more guides on Clark Hill than anywhere I know of as far as reservoir. There are a lot of Tennessee guides, but as far as around here, Clark Hill's got a ton of guides, and I think that's why. It's because it became such a good put and take fishery. You can go, and the guys that love filling those 150 quart coolers up, they love going to Clark Hill.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean, just ask Daniel Skipper. Daniel Skipper fills them up for people all the time. He doesn't even use ice.
Yeah. Get your 30 or 40 and gone, depending on how many you got on the boat.
Yeah, and it's they're going down and they're suspend fishing most of the time. They're going down to the dam and they're just suspending a Carolina rigged herring. Well,
everybody complains they don't like some people doing this, they don't like some people doing that, but at the end of the day, if a man's got a fishing license, he's not breaking no laws. There's really nothing you can do about it. I mean, I hate to see people kill big fish, but if that's what they want to do, they're going to do it. And no matter how much you bitch and gripe, you're not going to stop it. And you can say what you want on social media, but
most of your meatheads, they don't really fish that much. And the ones that do, a lot of them become, conservationists. I know guys that, and I mean, I was the same way when I first started fishing. When I got hardcore into fishing, I was a meathead. It was catch and releasing the grease all day long for me. I mean, letting them go was stupid. And eventually, I mean, look at me now. I don't keep anything. And I got friends that I've seen people start out keeping fish, and then I got hope for people. Not everybody wants to go fill a cooler up, and who wants to eat fish out of these lakes anyways? I mean, Lake Wiley is pretty nasty. They're just constantly having sewage spills, and that's another thing is people complain about the sewage spills, but the sewage spills help the fishery. That's nutrients. That's adding much needed nutrients to the fishery. So I love it. Every time we have a sewer dump, I love it. Now, as far as the fun boats and recreational people that come out here and ski and swim and stuff, it's not good. But for us fishermen, it's good.
Can you hear us, Scott?
Yeah, a little bit. My earbuds are not working like they're supposed to.
Any lake that has a wastewater treatment facility on it, if you can go find out where that wastewater treatment facility is, you'll never have a problem catching bait. Bait are all in that. They love it. Nutrients.
Yeah. Well, I would say, what about radioactivity and stuff like that? Like up in Tennessee, Melton Hill.
Well, Tennessee banned PCBs in like 1970s, but it's weird because that's.
No, I'm talking about where they built both of the atomic bombs out. They dumped all that shit in the bottom of Melton Hill Lake.
Keep trying.
I'm just going to come in and out all night.
I'm not sure about the radioactivity. Much about that.
Scott,
I've caught fish that had eyeballs on the top of their head. Their peg fin being a different location before on.
I see some notes there. Scott, let me borrow that book.
This guy's showing off his notes.
We got Glenn's Ferry.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
That handwriting looks awfully neat. Did Heather write that?
No, that's mine. That's Serial Killer. That guy.
No, Heather wrote that.
January 20th, 52 degrees.
Clark
Look at that.
Hill, 07.
48 pounds.
Winning fish came from Buffalo Creek, 48 pounds, free line. And big fish.
Shiver Creek.
Yeah.
Wow.
Scott, let me ask you a question. Did those notes really pay off? Have you ever used them and went back and did the same thing? Buy the notes the previous year and it paid off?
It puts you in the right area. It might not be the right same spot, but it tells you what them fish were doing at that time of year, what part of the lake. I mean, it's not going to repeat exactly, but it'll get you in the ballpark.
Yeah, we was talking about lakes and what they do now. And, I tell you, I remember when I first started striper fishing, the Savannah River project, and if I'm not mistaken, it starts in Harper. A lot of people used to thought it started at Kiwi, but it don't. It starts right below Harper Dam. Is that right? Or does it start up in Harper? No, it starts at the Harper Dam, below Harper Dam. And then all that all. Is that right, Scott?
Is what now?
Actually, the Savannah River project starts below Harper Dam.
The Savannah River Project?
Yeah, the Savannah River starts below the Hartwell Dam. That's where the Savannah River actually starts at.
Well, yeah, because you got the Seneca and the Tougaloo on Hartwell.
Yeah.
But it's all the same chain. They changed the name.
And then, so before they impounded Hartwell, then I guess that was still part of the Savannah River project.
I don't know. Look at Lake Murray, February 10th. That's coming up. Water temperature, 46 degrees.
Winning fish, 38 pounds.
Big hog. On a U rig.
On a U rig. Wow.
Yeah, that was Travis Perry. He passed away from cancer not too long ago. He was the coach at Greer football. And John Malden, they loved to pull U-rigs when that water got below 50 degrees.
When you say John Malden, are you talking about the public defender John Malden?
No, he's a retired school teacher.
Oh, okay.
He fishes Hartwell in a yellow starcraft. He still fishes with not as much, but you'll see him every once in a while out there.
I think Dean Collins caught some nice fish on Hartwell today. He put about 25 pictures of it and 3 videos of it.
Yeah, I was at work, but I seen he caught one nice one. So what are we talking about? Water temperature?
Just different lakes. You know, what time of the year you need to fish on that particular water, knowing that kind of what those fish do. Yeah, I was telling JR, I don't think no lake has the same pattern with you. I think fish do something different on everybody water. You know,
Clarks Hill and Hartwell are pretty similar. Murray's a different beast, and Russell is opposite all of them. But yeah, Clarks Hill and Hartwell fish pretty similar.
Hey, we was talking about Clarks Hill earlier. Maybe you know this, Scott. You got the oxygen line on Murray. You got the oxygen line on Russell. No, I'm sorry, oxygen line on Clarks Hill. Oxygen line on Russell. What's the purpose of those, and what are they talking about when they say they're pumping water back? When they dump water from Clarks Hill, from Russell into Clarks Hill, then they pump the water back up in there. Is that good oxygenated water? Is that why they do that?
From what I understand, they had to put them lines in to pump back because they were dumping, water in and then pulling it right back out. So for them to be able to do that, part of the deal was to add the oxygen lines on the lower end.
So why don't they do it on Hartwell?
because they don't pump back Hartwell.
Oh, they
So
just
they'll pay to put them in.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, Russell's the same deal, you know, because they would be on the lower end, and then they would be pumping bad water back up in there at night, pumping it out during the day. So they had to, from what I understand, that's why they had to put them in. That's why Hartwell won't see one. Probably.
I've heard stories. I don't know how true it is. Back years ago, when the water back from Clark's Hill, if you were up on Russell, you could get down to the cable, and they would actually, you could see all the bait that was turning back up when it was pulling it back up from Clark's Hill and throwing it up. And they say you could balloon bait out there and just get it.
I'd imagine. I never fished Russell when they were pumping back. I fished Clark's Hill at night in the summertime cut baiting and on the upper end. And at a certain time of night, you know, if you only had like 1.5 ounce sinkers or something, your sinkers would start going up river when that pump back. So
Wow. Yeah, that happens here on Wiley.
JR still got that man's boat. God, he's had that man's boat for 3 days.
That what?
I said, you've had that man's boat for 3 days.
What? I had that what for 3 days?
I said, you've had that guy's boat for 3 days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, today's the 3rd day. Yeah. Well, you know, the first day I was done. Was going to take his boat back to him. You know, I lost all that footage. Yesterday I come out here. I struggled getting him. To do this video, I have to stand on. I can't just hold the phone in front of my face. That sucks. So I want to put the camera, 10 feet from me. That makes it shows the boat, and I can point at things. So I need a microphone. So I tried using a shotgun mic yesterday, and GoPro having such a wide angle on it was all up in the frame. I didn't even realize it. So today, David Mercer let me borrow the mic. So I'm good to go now.
Well, let me ask you this. When you get your new camera, what are you going to do different?
Well, I'm not going to extend the 76-inch tripod all the way and put it on the bow of the boat and put it in gear. I can tell you that.
Right. Hey, in y'all's opinion right now, what do y'all think is the best striper lake in South Carolina?
For what? Numbers or size?
Size.
Russell.
Numbers.
Numbers. Probably Murray.
You think it's better than Clark's Hill now?
I mean, Murray's always been good for numbers. I mean, if you went to Murray in April and didn't catch 50 fish, ever since I've been fishing, I mean, it's all right. You might not catch many keepers.
You might be able to outdo Murray on Clark's Hill with hybrids, right? Because I don't think they stock hybrids.
There's no hybrids in Murray. Hey, look at this real quick. This is 08 Hartwell, March 1st.
Windy, 3 220, 31 pounds, 154 pounds off of LBC overcut.
Oh, my bad. Where was that? Look at where'd that go?
Did Scott go steal Brian Bear's notebook?
Yeah, right there. Look at what does it say?
Let's see. 50 foot windy.
54 pounds out of Little Beaver Creek.
Tougaloo, 54 pounds. Brian Bear sucks cock.
Look, it's already, it says March 1st, 50 degrees windy. Tougaloo Point, T20, a 31 pounder and a 26 pounder. 54 pounds out of Little Beaver Creek, deep over the trees. That was the good old days there.
That was the good old days.
There from the catch.
Huh?
That was back when they was fishing there to catch.
Oh, yeah.
You reckon
Hollow said he catches 50 to 75 on Murray all the time. I've never caught that many. I'm usually good for about 5 on Murray.
What did they say, JR?
Hollow said that he said he catches 50 to 75 on Murray all the time.
What, fish?
I guess so, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that happens. I mean, you might not catch, you won't catch that many keepers.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, what's a keeper over here now?
It's always
21,
been
right?
21 inches.
How many?
21,
Oh. Well,
which is about 3.5 pounder, I guess.
the first time I went to Murray, me and Kenny Moore went down there, drove 2.5 hours, stopped down there and got some bait. We went all the way to the dam on the other side of the dam. I forgot the name of that marina. We went in there behind the store and got some bait. Went down in there and put the boat in. We went out of that marina, around the point, went up to an island about half a mile, and put some lines out down the and caught 5 fish. Then we caught 10 fish in less than 30 minutes, and we were done. We couldn't keep fishing. You got to keep the first. You can't creel out. So I told him, I said, hell yes, I'll never come back down here and do this. That's the only time I ever fished Murray.
Murray's fun in the
funny
spring.
On Murray, you'll see bassers fishing for striper. When those birds are hitting,
Yeah.
they'll be casting Alabama rigs and bucktail and everything else. But they'll be the first ones to talk junk about stripers. But they sure will go catch them.
Yeah.
They used to ask me at the gas station, are they schooling? Because I was like, no. But yeah, Murray's fun. Murray's a fun lake in the spring. You can go down there, and especially if you want just a bunch of fish to eat, you can load the cooler, Murray.
I know a lot of guys will, when they fish striper tournaments on Murray, they don't care where the fish are. They go pull the rivers. They go pull big bait in the river.
Yeah, certain times,
like
like in the cold months, they do a lot of river fishing. I always fish kind of the lower end of the lake, almost year round.
Now you got to keep the first 5, right? You can't creel out. So what if you catch a fish that's not a keeper? Does that count as your 5 fish anyway?
In the
certain months, right?
It still
Ain't
counts
that certain months only?
It's like June to August or something. I mean, it's not in the spring. You can cull.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Striper Keeps stopped having summertime tournaments on Murray, you know, because of that rule. Because it really wouldn't be fair in a tournament, you know.
Yeah.
On Murray, when all the guys are down there with the lights out, tied to the towers, blasting their radios, you think the radios help draw the fish in? The music?
I don't think you could get them away from your boat at Murray at night. I mean,
That's pretty cool. That's a cool experience to go down there and tie off those towers. You know, all those other boats out there. You know, it's 100 and whatever, 150 foot deep, and you're fishing around, 40 to 60 feet of water with live herring on Carolina rigs. That's fun.
I mean, the thing is, though, you don't have to. You can be on any hump, like a 70-foot hump off the river channel, all the way down from. You don't have to be around them boats. I mean, you just set up on them humps and down ride and catch all you want. I've never fished the towers, but I ran out of bait.
You're right. I've actually went down there before to fish the towers, and there was too many boats. There really wasn't anywhere to tie up to be out of the way. And I kind of just went out within sight of the towers and fished the humps and did really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I seen Jason Bennett on his page the other day. He went to saltwater, didn't he? Is he still guiding on Murray?
Oh, I seen somebody who's going to go to Florida, and that didn't work out, and he was down in Myrtle Beach or something.
How about Chip Bragg? Is he guiding? He guides on Murray.
Yeah, Chip's good.
Chip Bragg, that's a friend of mine at work. That's his buddy.
I like Chip. Chip's cool. He's building a boat right now. He's been working on it for a long time, and it's coming around. It's nice. He sends me some videos of it.
What
Is
kind
it
of
a
boat?
TR?
No, I think it's I want to say it's an old Starcraft, but he pretty much gutted it and just like redone everything. Transom, floor.
People love those old Starcraft. I mean, they love them.
It might not be a Starcraft, but I thought it was. It's a deep V, but it's gonna be nice when he's done. He's put a lot of work into it.
What gauge aluminum is your North River?
Paper thin.
You know what it is on this boat?
What are we talking about? The hull or the?
Yeah, the hull.
Everything.
Hull? Yeah.
Oh, it's all the same.
I mean, yeah, isn't it?
No, usually the hull's thicker, but I mean it might not be. Was it like 0.190 or something?
This is 0.125.
125.
Yeah. What's yours?
0.250.
Oh, wow.
So you're almost out there with a huge craft.
Yeah, I heard you fools last week. You can't get me.
This boat is this is a pretty cool boat. This actually has the same dead rise as Clinton's boat. It has a 15-degree hull, but it's 22 feet, not 24. It's 72-inch floor with a 94-inch beam, 28-inch side.
So that whole design, that's the same boat as mine, ain't it? Just different layout in the floor.
Well, I don't know. Your boat might be 0.100 gauge aluminum. This one is 0.125.
I don't think so, JR.
Well, I know that some of the sea arcs were, I think they recently went to the 0.125. They were 0.100.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
I think they're 0.190 on the whole. I might be wrong, but if they're 0.100, then don't hit a stick. I mean, that's 0.190 is an eighth of it. So, I mean, you're talking.
That boat probably weighs 3 tons.
This boat weighs, I think it weighs 1,800 pounds.
I don't know what my boat weighs dry. I ain't never looked at the specs on it.
This one has a 25-inch transom too. It's got a 300 Yamaha. You want to talk about getting down the lake now? Get down the lake.
Now, see, my boat's only rated for 250.
No, that's a pretty boat. It's caught some big fish.
Yeah, Zach has won a lot of tournaments in this boat. He won King of the Games, I think, last year or the year before last.
I've never met Zach or talked to him, but he seems like a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, he is. He's OCD when it comes to catching big fish.
Ain't we all?
Yeah.
He don't look like he should be catfishing, though. He looks like he should be on like Abercrombie or Finch or some shit.
Yeah, he's the preppy of catfishermen of the bunch, that's for sure.
Gerald, what was that you said? You asked me, did I have ADHD when we were fishing? Because I had to make all of these level boards a certain way, each one a certain way from the other one. And how far I was putting the bait behind the board. You pay attention to that shit, don't you? I was like, it messes me up if everything ain't right.
Yeah, that's the thing about striper fishing with your friends. If they're fishermen too, is you kind of want to do everything, because if you don't, then you kind of want to go behind them. And when you go behind them, some people can kind of take offense to that. They're like, what are you doing? I put that out. It's fine, And you're like, well, I just want to make sure.
I don't ever do that anymore. I used to, but like I took a buddy that only went fishing once or twice, and we were fishing a cove. It wasn't far from where we fished the tournament. And he took a Mongo gizzard shad, nose hooked it, and dropped it down at a down line at 10 feet. And we were pulling shallow, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I don't know. There's fish down there on the bottom, so it's 10 foot deep. And I'm like, well, that thing's going to get hung up and waste of time. We went over a point that was 3 feet deep. They're dragging all the way back. And I'm just shaking my head. And we come over that point, and it drops down to like 12 feet. And as soon as we come over the drop off, that thing nailed.
Wow.
It's like a 22-pound striper. Hit 10 feet below the. So now, whenever somebody does something different.
Hey, I've caught a lot of fish on Murray. Was talking about Murray earlier. I've been drifting out there at Murray and not be paying attention. I might have my rod down at like say 20 feet, for example, and come up to like 15 feet, and the rod starts to get hung up, start bouncing the bottom, you know. And I've caught a lot of fish doing that, not paying attention and letting them hit the bottom.
We were in a tournament and we had shad out, and because we already had 3 fish, and we hung one on the outside planter board. It was like a 20-pound fish, and we were jacked up excited, and it tangled up the middle planter board. And when we were trying to net the front fish, the middle planter board shad was just laying on its side right behind the boat and just got smoked. Like, smoked. We didn't get it in, but when they're ready to eat,
doesn't matter, does it?
That's like the transom bait. You know, that was kind of a secret for a long time. A lot of people use it now, but I mean, it shocks me every time a transom bait gets hit. Just
I know. I think that stems from the saltwater world.
Probably, yeah.
I was on Clark Hill one day, had a light out close to the dam. My cousin had went out with Jay Leatherman, I think it was Jay Leatherman. It was either Jay Leatherman or Bill Beatty. It was one of those. And smoked the hybrid. So we went back the next day and anchored up right on the same spot. And we were downline fishing. And just for the hell, I was hearing fish bust. And it was nighttime. We had a light out. I was hearing fish bust. So for the hell of it, I had a bomber long egg tie on. I cast it out there. And when I casted it out, a rod went off. I set it down and left the bomber long egg floating up there. It was kind of windy, kind of choppy a little bit. Anyways, we got that fish in. And as soon as we got that fish in, the bomber long egg, it was just setting out there. I had set the rod down. It was just setting out floating. It got hit. And man, that thing was smoking drag. And I didn't have my drag adjusted right, and he took off under the boat and bent the rod up under the boat and snapped me off. That was a good fish.
Yeah, I think when them fish are really feeding, I mean, I got a video. It didn't come out that good, but Sumo caught the biggest fish I've caught on Russell so far. And when we got it to the boat, it was 40 pounds, right at 40, and there was 2 with it, same size, trying to get the bait out of his mouth right at the boat. Like, I was videoing, or I probably could have netted 2 of them, but
fish are kind of like, I think they're like dogs sometimes. You know how when you're feeding one dog, another dog tries to get his food, you know, they don't want the other dog to get food, even if they're not hungry. I think fish act that way sometimes.
Yeah, when they're really ready to feed, they do, for sure. But you're talking about fishing like winter patterns and summer patterns. Is that what you guys were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know, like on reservoir, like Heartwood, you know, you got when the fish are all at the summertime, they're like within 90% of the fish are within like 3 miles of the dam. And then as the fall comes, you can kind of follow them up. Like they'll come up mid-lake creeks and then up to the mouth of the rivers. And then as you get into winter, they just kind of hang in the creeks, but kind of deeper. And then as the spring comes, you know, they run up the creeks. And it's just a pattern. They do it. I know a lot of guys that are new to striper fishing, you know, that pattern is what kills them. That's what did me when I first started.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you figure out, and it ain't a rule set in stone. I mean, I know a guy that caught some 20 pounders at Twin Lakes in July, which that's halfway up the Seneca, but for the majority of it, there's a pattern. Once you figure that pattern out, you can kind of narrow that 56,000 acres down to maybe 10,000 acres. You know?
All right. You know, these fish, these big fish, they tend to their forage changes as they get bigger. You know, they might be feeding on, like say striper, for example. They may be feeding on redfin. They may be feeding on fathead minnows, redfin, small gizzard shad, and as they get older, they may move to panfish. They may be eating yellow perch, white perch, crappie, brim. I think a lot of these fish, if you like right now, the water temp on Lake Wiley is around 48 degrees. And if you are going to your brush piles that you normally catch crappie on in the spring, and there's no fish there, it's a ghost town. It's because the water temp is still too cold. They've moved out of the creeks or whatever. They moved to deeper water. And they're going to come back to those brush piles in the spring. Well, one thing you can do is if you're a striper fisherman or any kind of fisherman, a lot of those larger apex predator fish, they feed on panfish. Crappie's a panfish. If the crappie aren't on the brush piles in your 12-foot of water on brush piles and creeks, then the apex predators probably aren't there either.
Now
so it's kind of a telltale sign when you start to see those panfish move back in on those brush piles in the more shallow water, then it's time to start targeting the apex predator.
Yeah, that's a general rule for numbers, but I mean, I have no idea what stripers are doing sometimes, as much as I've been fishing. But like, I think the big females will move up in the creeks first, and they usually do it. It might not be, and I don't know why. I guess it's the sun, you know, how long it's daylight or whatever tells them, but they'll move up in them creeks, and them creeks will be dead. There won't be no bait in them creeks, you know, and the water will still be too cold. But yet, if you go up in them creeks early, like that's your best chance of hitting big females is early before, you know, anybody's even thinking about going in the creeks.
That's strange. It makes you wonder why.
And it's also it's a good chance of getting skunked too. But I mean,
well, I'll tell you, I've been back in creeks that was literally loaded with bait. I mean, just pot after pot of bait. And if I see bait like that in a creek, I won't fish it.
Well, yeah, you got too much competition.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that's stupid. You know, they say you're pulling the bait out there. It's, you know, they're more likely to hit your bait because it can't get away. It's acting longer. It's got a hook in it. It acts different. I think that's a crock of shit. You can't tell me you got a pot of bait over here with 2 or 300 or 2 or 3,000 herring in it. This one fish is going to go out there trying to get my one herring. Just concentrating on that pot of bait. It ain't out looking for one bait. You know, man. That's just my thoughts on it.
When I'm talking like creeks, going back in creeks, I'm talking like going back in creeks, like where the only bait you would see would be flipping on the surface. But like them creeks will be dead, but them big females will be roaming in there early. But yeah, like Murray, when the bait gets so thick up the river that blacks your graph out, I mean, you can still do good catching numbers up there. But there's just so many fish in Murray.
Yeah. I think they stock at least 1 million a year. They're insane.
And it's like they get to 22, 23 inches and stop growing.
Yeah.
Do they have fish kills in Murray? Have they had any big fish kills in Murray like they have in Harville?
They have, but it's been quite a few years. Quite a few years ago. I just think, I mean, they take a lot of fish out of Murray, and then I also think, like we talked about, the big fish, once they get a certain size, they're more loners, you know. They're not in the community holes as much.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you catch big fish in the community holes once in a while, but majority of the time if you're going for big fish and catching big fish compared to what lake you're fishing, you're probably only going to get a couple bites. I mean, it ain't going to be fast and furious. It's going to be loner fish.
Yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine wants to go fishing all the time, and every time he's like, yeah, man, my freezer's getting kind of empty. I'm about ready to go. I'm like, well, you ain't going with me. We ain't going after numbers. We're probably going to get skunked. I'm going to go ahead and tell you.
I mean, Murray's a good lake. I mean, you go there end of March, and take about 6 dozen herring and some water bugs and load a cooler.
Yes,
Load
sir.
it.
Oh, no,
If you
those
want-
noodle rods too.
Yeah, if you want some eaters, that's a good time to go for sure.
Or do it with some light tackle.
Yes, sir.
JR, you ain't got a line out there in over an hour. What are you doing on that ragged ass lake? You wait shit in Wiley.
I'm trophy fishing.
How big's that crap you got on there about that big?
No, the crappie I got on there is they're about 12 inches. They're big.
So I got a question.
The fish hits these rods, this is going to be a big fish.
So I got a question. Catfish, and they spawn late, right? Like June, May,
Yeah,
June.
well, you know, the blues, the channels, and the flatheads. I think the flatheads spawn. They don't spawn until the water temp hits like 80. The blues spawn before they do.
So as much as I've cut bait, like let's say March. Well, let's say April. I cut bait April. I'm gonna be anchored
They're not
out.
spawning yet.
Do what?
They're not spawning yet.
No, but like I'll anchor up saying 15, 20 foot, maybe 25 foot in April, fan cast from 5 feet to maybe 35 feet.
Right.
I rarely catch catfish. If I do catch any, it's like little channel cat. And I think that has to do with the depth of water that the striper's in. They don't really share the same depth with the catfish, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think when you're talking March and April, I think a lot of your catfish are still deep.
Yeah, I know
Probably not going deep enough.
catfishermen always ask me if I catch a lot of catfish, and I don't. I mean, we've caught a 20 here or there. We catch a bunch of little channel cats, but we rarely get on any big catfish. And I think
you fish in the Savannah chain. You fish in the Savannah chain, even for big stripers, you're probably only using like dollar sized gizzard shad, right? That's probably about the biggest you're using.
Cut bait, and if I cut bait these lakes, taking out Russell, I'm going to be cut baiting 90% herring, and I have about 2 or 3 big gizzard shad.
Yeah, cut herring is just not a good catfish bait. These fish, this time of year, man, nothing's going to beat a Mondo gizzard. You take a Mondo, let's say you got a 15-inch gizzard, weighed close to a pound. That's 2 baits. That's what you use when you're catfishing.
It just seems like they'd be opportunists, you know, if that's the only thing laying on the bottom.
They do have a bad reputation, but there's a lot of myths about catfish that just aren't true. Catfish is actually faster than a largemouth bass. They're pretty amazing fish. They can sense better, even when the water temp is muddy. Some of the best catfishing trips I've ever been on has been after a flood and the water looks like chocolate milk. You can kill the catfish, and the other fish just aren't feeding because they're going by. Stripers go by a lot on their sight. That's why when the sun gets up, they go deep. Their eyes they're sensitive to the light, and all that. They're just much more temperamental than a catfish. But it doesn't mean that they're more of an efficient predator. They're just more temperamental.
Catfish is one of the best. They've got one of the best access of scent. They can smell better than any fish in freshwater. And I always thought a striper could smell better, but I Googled that one night just looking at a catfish in freshwater. I think it's the best. They've got the best.
Well, your stripers are going to be more on the schools. They're going to be more on schools and bait. Your catfish they're more loners. They're not in giant schools like stripers. They're out here feeding on yellow perch, and they're kind of sitting out on the outskirts where bait is present. Like they're kind of like adjacent or within close proximity of bait a lot of times, but they're not out there swimming through it as much as stripers are chasing.
I remember early 2000, we went to Santee, and man, we loaded a wheelbarrow. It was January, early January, and we were drifting we'd go down the lower channel Moultrie, and he'd mark a school of bait fish, and the wind was blowing, I think, east to west, and he would go east out of the channel into like 10 foot of water, and we put out like 6 rods, and he would drift. We would drift with the wind over that channel, and then once we got up on the other side, we'd pick up and do it again. But I mean, that was January, and them fish, they were smacking the bait. So
yeah,
you were talking about cold weather with the catfish. I think to me, they handle it better than the stripers do.
The blues like cold weather. They do like cold weather.
And we were using them big cut mullet that they catch at the discharge. I don't know if they still do it. There used to be a discharge in the canal.
Yeah.
And we go up there and throw the cast net and catch them big 12-inch, 14-inch mullet.
They call it the hot hole, Scott.
Yeah.
Wait, we used to go up there and get the big 12-aught treble hooks with the weight in the middle and tie them straight to braid and just throw up in there when they hit the line. You can feel them when they hit the line. Listen, I snagged one night and got spooled on 6,500 and doesn't have no water. I couldn't stop it because they were full of water. I don't know how big that mullet was. The mullet's fun to catch snagging them.
It busted the guts.
One to Stampede.
The guts out of it.
No, he didn't get the guts on this one. He did. He got all the line off of it.
Going to Stantee and filling a cooler up and using those techniques that you're talking about to catfish, that's about equivalent in the striper world as a guy that goes down to the dam and puts a light out and fills a cooler up with hybrids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We went out with a guy named, I think his name was JP out of Hills.
No, his name was JD Champion.
Yeah, he had one blue eye and one brown eye.
JD Champion. That's the guy I was telling you, Scott. He netted that fish for me from his boat that night. I caught that 81-pound blue, and I called him on the radio, and he come up the canal. He had a party. Some guy on his party netted that fish for me from their boat because I couldn't get it over to my boat because they was full of water.
He would go down that canal at idle speed, and I thought it was like a no-wake zone. But he would just idle down the canal, but he was just killing time, basically.
Yeah.
You know how these saltwater guys go out at 10 miles an hour all the way out?
Yeah.
They charge you a 12-hour trip, and 6 hours of it you're running.
Yep.
No, JD.
JD died about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know half his ear was missing and his nose. He had skin cancer.
He had skin cancer. He was a great guy, though. He was a good dude.
Well, guys, I'm still on the lake, and I got to be at work in the morning, so I'm going to go ahead and call it.
All right. Let's get to
the good one. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you guys later.
Peace.
All right.